Hello and welcome to Rauta's reviews, and this time it's a little bit outside the normal box. It's not one album, it's not dual review, but it's actually 4 albums. Now, I got these 4 albums already a couple of years ago, going into the big pile. Well, I just have a bunch of older releases to talk about at some point. And the reason why they're here is that I got them along with the latest album back then, and I didn't really feel like I would find a place to talk about them individually because they were kind of older reissues, and also, you know, the newer releases always take place first. But at some point, obviously, when I'm going through the older releases, I have this list where they kind of come in chronological order. I decided it's time for talk about them finally. And since they were like old releases on arrival, doesn't matter whether we're talking about these albums in 2023 or 2025 as it is. This band is of course Runemagick from Sweden, now with the 4 releases here in question. Like I mentioned, I had this newer one out there back in the days, but now it's time to talk about a little bit of history. But like I said, this is a little bit unusual video because first of all, I'm not doing a retrospective with all of the albums in question, but talking about few of them here and there. I don't know how interesting or whatever it is, but it is what it is, right? Before we get into these releases, I guess it's better to do this in the other way around than what I usually do. Usually I unbox first and go by album and then start reviewing. But this time it's a little bit different because, like I said, this is not really a retrospective video, but yet also not a focus in a single release. This is pretty interesting because the band started already in 1990. And while they obviously didn't, do much in the beginning in terms of albums, I mean, as late as 1998, with the first album, 8 years after the making, well, this band has been here for 35 years and it's a long time. So they're really veterans of the given genre, which in their case is mostly death, doom, metal from Sweden. But as it is, they started with demos like so many bands back in the days, obviously, before getting a record deal and all that stuff. But ever since 1998, they released albums very quickly, almost back to back. I mean, 2 albums already during the first year, two first years, and then another one also in the year 2000. So 3 albums within the span of 3 years. Then you move on after an EP demo, whatever, and again 2002, 2 albums in a row, and more EPs, split, what have you, another 2003 album, 2004, 2005, you get the idea. Lots of activity going on. Also continuing with 2006, 2007, and then something collapsed big time. Now you scroll back to this and say, okay, they pretty much split up in 2007, only to come back 10 years later, which is why you find the next album, 2018, and then again 2019. Here you have 4 years step to Beyond the Cenotaph of Mankind, which I got when it was released, including these with the same box. And now 2025, once again, there is a new album. So all in all, a vast amount of releases, lots of demos, EPs, and of course lots of albums. I mean, if you count the albums here, you already see there are quite a few of them. And what is curious is that there is this only one man who is more or less keeping all the strings, pun intended, in his fingers. And here is officially said that vocals and guitars already in the early years, that is first 17 years or so, and later on too as well, but all instruments, vocals later on. So if you look at past members, there are quite a few, so obviously never was fully a solo project in that sense. And of course you might have live musicians and whatnot. And even if you would go to individual releases, like let's pick this one, this Beyond the Cenotaph stuff, you would see lineup there are more band members than just one guy. So what I'm saying here is this might seem as a solo project, but technically speaking, it's beyond that as well. Even with this solo project looking band photo and all. So what we have here in question is 4 prior albums to the one of 2023, and these are as late albums Darkness, Death, Doom from 2003. Already, if you count it, it's number 6. Then here we have Funeral Wings and Envenom from roughly the same years. So albums number 7 and 8. And then there is this step to into Desolate Realms of 2019. So there is a skip between these and two. Now, the reason why I'm getting is probably the band member who sent me the new album back in the days and decided to include these, that these are from the one and the same label, Hammerheart Records. So probably getting reissues sent to him, and there's always good room to promote the band even further than just with the latest album. So in this respect, this review video being a couple of years late, I mean, it's a good way to bring the talk back about the band in questions once again, because like I said, music never gets old. It's interesting, however, that year 2025 Hammerheart is about to release this new album. I'm now saying it's about to release because this is coming out in October, but by the time my video gets out, I'm only guessing my video will be after this new album one, so I don't know. I don't know really the schedule, how it's gonna be, but roughly around the same year or so. Let's hope that this video is gonna promote you, the band itself, and maybe this gets you curious about the new stuff as well. So, still active once again after the comeback, and it's interesting to see where it will go. As you can see, these ones are Hammerheart releases, much like the new album is, so there is that. But now let's get back to the actual albums. So here we are. Let's start in chronological order. First we have this Darkness, Death, Doom reissue. As you can see, nice black non-glossy digipack. Hammerheart has done a nice job here. This is how it looks. I'm gonna unbox it on the go and explain the music. Now, as the description is saying, this is Death Doom band, and that's really the case here with this particular album. No lyrics whatsoever. You have the lineup, you have some photos and recording information, very stripped down in that sense, but nice looking digipack nonetheless. Musically, this is like a school book example how to do a Doom death release. I mean, basically, from death metal side, you obviously have growly vocals, heavy guitars, certain kind of riffs and all that stuff. And from Doom side of things, you get the rather classic, slow tempo, very much like the heavy atmosphere and all that stuff. Now, to separate this from a lot of other bands in Doom death metal genre, if you would compare this to, say, My Dying Bride or early Anathema and stuff like that, you don't really have the gothic element. That which was very much present with Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride and Anathema, but they are British bands. From Swedish bands, it's always a little bit different. More on the death metal side of thing, but happening with the slow tempo and all. It's not really like it's, fast forward and so aggressive. So it's almost like this British take, but somehow different. The Darkness is a little bit different in general, where the British bands tend to be more bleak and very much more gothic, romantic even, if you will, with the violence and whatever you might have there, clean vocals. This is more like, okay, we want to go a little bit in the entombed, grave, dismembered side of things, but less aggressive, less, gory stuff, and less death in a way, but kind of a doom and darkness being in the center. And this is a very much like that, with almost 60 minutes of music. There is not much grooviness, there is not thrashiness like old school death metal tends to be. There's nothing really related to black metal, so it's just kind of a one and only niche kind of a thing. Falls between the death and doom metal, and that's pretty much of it. There's not much changes, so if you don't like one or two songs, you probably end up disliking the whole album. But vice versa. If you like one or two songs, you probably end up liking the rest of the album as well. Now, a little bit later came this Envenom, and as you can see, there are similarities with the album design and the package. Non-glossy black digipack, very simple, only 4 tracks, but still even more music. This case, if that was some 58 minutes, this is something like 61 or whatever. And the style is indeed very much the same. We cannot really talk about so much like progression or whatever. So much like the booklet in the previous one, just line up and recording information, band photo and all that stuff. So these are almost like siblings, but not only because the reissues are one and the like, more like the music is pretty much what I just described. I wouldn't really call Envenom so much like a step up from the game. It's more like a successor in the sense of, we have leftovers. But in this case, leftovers doesn't mean it's less. Think it like a casserole food. Sometimes day one you get it good, the next day it's slightly better. In this case, very much the same rules apply as with the first album mentioned here. That is, you have these lengthy tracks, it's very heavy, it's doom and dark and death metal kind of a thing. So it's like, nothing really changes. If you want more the same, obviously you want Envenom. But then again, these are so much like siblings to one another that if you dislike one, you're gonna end up disliking the other too. I don't find there are so many differences that it would be worthwhile mentioning. So take it as like that. Once again, a little bit later on Funeral Wings, this is even lengthier. As you can see, lots of different tracks here. So you might understand already by this point that this isn't made of 10-minute tracks on average like the previous one. Well, more like 15 minutes on average. This is definitely more compact in songwriting and in general feels a little bit like a step up. However, once again, the style is roughly the same. Now, more than 70 minutes of music. It can really get overwhelming. I think this was something like 73 minutes or whatever. So it's really a lot to digest on one go, not to mention multiple times like I do for these reviews. Sound-wise, they're all pretty much the same. Very organic and heavy at the same time. And when I say organic, I really mean they are these kind of a trickling down effects, like some kind of reminders of old school, doom metal. We're really talking about the kind of a Black Sabbath kind of a thing. So it's heavy, but in an old school way. So if you get the 70s or 80s vibe from these kind of albums, with growly vocals, mind you, it's exactly what I'm thinking here of. So they don't really sound like modern or even 90s or even 2000s release, but like let's go back to 70s and 80s. Good and heavy, but at the same time it feels a little bit like sound from the past. But this is, in songwriting wise, a little bit better. Maybe because the songs are now a little bit more compact. Maybe it's more because it's a little bit now on the death metal side of things. I already feel like there is now less doom. If these other ones are more like 50-50 in terms of doom and death metal, with this case I would say roughly 70 on death metal side, 30 on doom metal side. So kinda in the same box, but now moving on to something really different and focusing on the death metal side of things, which I think is a little bit better. Now then, as a last but definitely not least, we have the Into Desolate Realms. As you can see, this is not a digipack in a non-glossy ways, but actual typical jewel case now with colored cover. The track list is quite vast, and this is also beyond 70 minutes, but the reason is this actually has an EP as bonus tracks. So as an album, it would be a little bit less, which is, in this case, good. Now, some people think always more is more, and that's kind of true, but more is not necessarily better. And that's the case with this one. I think this is probably most focused on all of these 4 albums. But then again, this is a lot later than these other albums. So this, in style-wise, kind of goes closer to the Funeral album I mentioned here, on the Funeral Wings. Definitely more on death metal side of things rather than the doom metal kind of stuff. You might find a little bit of that gothic hint here too, but it's not like the changes are drastic. Once again, all of these albums, despite the changes, are in my opinion quite consistent. Saying if you like one album, you're gonna end up liking, most likely that is, the rest. But it's almost like if you give it a go for 1 or 2 albums and you're not really sure if that is your thing, I don't think these other albums will change it. Now for the whole retrospective, going for discography, that's another lesson maybe happening in the future. But I think Runemagick is, in its very core, it's a beauty that it doesn't change too much. It's always more or less keeping in its own turf. And I can respect that a lot because when and if I find a new favorite band, doesn't matter if it's a band like Iron Maiden or if it's like, I don't know, Paradise Lost or Cannibal Corpse, I rather see a band focusing what they do well rather than, change too much. In Paradise Lost cases, I just happen to like different eras, but I'm not saying it's necessarily a good thing. When it comes to bands like Cannibal Corpse, making album after album, they're pretty much the same for more than 35 years. And like sign me up for that. And I can only wish a lot of my other favorite bands, like say Darkthrone or Enslaved, would do the same. Stick to the game you actually can handle. Stick to your guns. But too many bands change over the years, and not all eras make you equally happy as the ones before or after. So what I'm saying here, for Runemagick's credit, they have been able to keep it very focused on the given genre. Now that is one thing. If you don't like doom death metal, then you're out of luck with this particular band. But if you do like, then this is more like some kind of a blessing. You're gonna arrive late, and you're gonna be, wow, there's so much things to explore and enjoy. So this is kind of a half a retrospective, if you will, in that sense. And if I got you curious, check out the new album, check out older albums. Obviously, check out these albums in question. Links are provided in the description box. And if you do have questions, let me know. And what is worth mentioning, that is that I got to also review some side project by this very band, like Heavy Death, which is a little bit different take on heavy doom metal rather than doom death, which is the case here. Kind of a similar but also different, but some same members in the business. So check out the links, check out the music, and I hope you like it. Now off you go, and see you soon with more reviews coming your way. Bye.